comes to inverse functions, it's actually pretty simple, guys. Inverse means something that is flipped, the opposite. So here, guys, we have a table that represents the x and the y, also known as the f of x. When you put an x on the 10, I get a 60 as an answer. So, sorry, guys. So this is, in this function, this is the original function f. Now, how do you know something is the inverse? That's when you have a little negative one on top. That negative one means it's the opposite of what you're looking at. So in this case, you're plugging in a 10 on the x, but when it's inverse, you're plugging a 40 on the y, or in other words, on the f of x. So let's do a quick example. On a regular function, sorry about that, on a regular function, you have something like, if you put an x on the 10, look, when I put a 10 on the x, I get a 60 as an answer. So my answer for this one is 60. When I put a 40 on the x, again, look at the x. When I put in a 40, I get an answer of 0. So that's where it goes, right? So that's how the original f works. Now the inverse, when you have that negative 1, what we have to do is now the 40 goes on the y. So here's the y, guys. When my y is 40, we're working backwards now. What is the x? It's actually a 20. So a 20 goes here. The inverse, it's flipped. When my y is 20, look at the y. When my y is 20, what's the x? It's 30. So that 30 goes right there. Basically, it's flipped. And the same can be said about a graph. Look, right here, this is the original graph. Remember, it's original. We know it's original because it doesn't have the little negative 1 on top. So that's the original graph. If I were to tell you, hey, this is my original, there's no negative 1, so that's my original g. When I put a negative 3 on the x, look, when my x is negative 3, what's my y? My y is negative 7 on the original graph. Now, if I'm talking about the inverse, I can still use the same graph. I just gotta know that the x and the y are flipped. So when my y is negative 7, look, when my y is negative 7, where's negative 7? Right here. I'm working backwards. When my y is negative 7, my answer's negative 3. You see how that goes? The same thing could have been said about any other function, such as, let me give you, look, when my inverse is 2. So in other words, when my y is 2, look at that. When my y is 2, where's my x? You guessed it, it's also 2. It's all about what they're giving you guys. The original function, the in parentheses, is the x. When it has a negative 1, the inverse will be the y. And that's it for that.